Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Capo for the U.S. Chamber Foundation team. We have a panelist of three women today. We're going to start with introductions for each of them, and then we'll move to a big group discussion and Q&A section. I think we have about everyone here now. So Laura, if you'd like to start us off with your intro.
Sure. My name is Laura Ward, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Talent Development. And I don't look anything like my headshot. If you saw me on the street, you would never recognize me. So this is what I really look like today. But I am so thrilled to be here. We're going to talk about the construction field. And so in our introductions, we're going to spend about 5 or 6 minutes just talking about our collaboratives, where we are, kind of what we're doing. And then, so if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll get to your questions once we're finished. In terms of, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and in terms of our construction group, we call it a Talent Solutions Council. And we have 5 collaboratives running at the same time. And our work started before talent pipeline management. We had skills panels, which were very popular, I think, in around 2015, and they worked well, but they weren't sustainable. Once they went through the exercise, there was no reason for them to stay together. So we found that talent pipeline management was a reason for those folks to stay together and continue talking about talent. So after they completed their work and fell apart, we still had this group of employers who had a good experience. So that's kind of how we brought our first group together. And the chamber sat in a really natural space to convene those folks. And so we brought them together as a council. We looked at large and medium-sized employers because they had capacity. They had an HR person, most likely, who was willing to sit around the table and talk through the steps in the talent pipeline management system. And in terms of benefiting the chamber, we really felt like this was the solution we had been looking for. Employers, I don't know how many chamber members we have here. If you work at a chamber, I would love to know that in the chat. But we really felt like this was the solution because everyone is always asking the chamber about talent solutions. Except they didn't really call it a talent pipeline. They weren't using the language that we're able to use with talent pipeline management system. And so this gave us a language, and supply chain approach really resonates with employers. So that was a really great starting off point for us. In terms of sort of where we are in the process, we're analyzing our talent right now. So that is where we have, I'll be real honest, where we have hit the skids in this work. It's still on track and it's still happening, but in an earlier session, someone mentioned that employers don't like the platform. And I think really it's because they have not built their muscle around using it. And so we really saw when the pandemic hit was when we were at that point. And so we felt like that was a good time to take a step back. In Nashville, construction was deemed an essential business. And so they did not miss a beat and continued working. So we were able to say, we're going to pause on this for a few months. And that gave us time, because we also had turnover. Anyone who's using these tools knows, like, turnover is going to happen. You're going to have to retrain someone and also build relationships and trust with employers. And so we used the pandemic as an opportunity to really take a step back, reassess, and allow our employers to kind of level set. So that's where we are. And as we move forward, we really look at this as a sustainable, ongoing solution. We've developed these councils in multiple sectors, and we have already identified a couple of other sectors that we'll expand it to. But when we talk about the structure, we really like the working on the employer piece first, holding employers accountable for what they need, and then bringing education into the conversation. Because what we found prior to using this solution was, when you bring education around the table with employers, it turns into a commercial for education, because that's what they do. They recruit people. So we found that this allowed us to kind of navigate those conversations a little bit better. So that is my very long introduction, but also kind of an overview of what we're doing in Nashville. And so I'm going to turn it over to the next person.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Tammy Ford. I am with Carolina's Associated General Contractors. I am the director of the Build Your Career Workforce Development Initiative for Carolina's AGC. Just to give you a little bit of background about Carolina's AGC, we are a very large trade association representing almost 1,000 non-residential construction employers across both North and South Carolina. We kind of started out in this whole TPM approach by sort of, figuring out what pain point needs to lead us in the direction of forming our group. How are we going to do that and where? I think everybody in this breakout room that has anything to do with the construction industry knows that there has been a systemic labor shortage, a skilled trades, skilled worker kind of gap for a long time. And, a lot of that comes from our current workforce aging out and not enough skilled workers coming up into training programs, not enough next gen workers, wanting to pursue careers in the trades. So there are a lot of commonalities across the board in the residential and non-residential sector. And again, those gaps are systemic. We got buy-in early from our employer members. Again, we represent almost 1,000. So, we had begun having some sideline conversations with the group of employers that we wanted to target for where we launched the collaborative, which is in Wilmington, North Carolina on the coast, lovely area. But, we were having these sideline conversations with them and really pitching the whole premise of talent pipeline management as a solutions-based approach, very employer-led, very employer-driven. We were very transparent from the get-go, right out of the gate, about our goals and our mission. Again, that this was employer-led, letting our employers know that workforce challenges are not really one size fits all, nor are the solutions. Our members come across the board from all different sectors and divisions of construction. And so they're very naturally competitive. There has been a lot of poaching in the industry as well as other industries because, so many different industries are facing workforce shortages. But, as Sarah mentioned in the general session, Sarah from Kentucky with the Healthcare Collaborative, she said she likes to call her folks the Clash of the Titans. And we like to think of ours as collaborations of the Titans because these folks are very competitive with one another. They are directly competing for the same workers, but yet they're very respectful of one another. They know that they're all in this at the end of the day. There's a lot of familiarity with one another through the trade association. It was a little easier for us to get that buy-in. We stressed how the TPM principles were different. That it was true talent pipeline management sort of from end to end. Employers really aren't just coming to the table as stakeholders, they are truly end customers. And so we wanted to stress that there was power in voices, power in numbers. We initially targeted general contractors for our collaborative. We wanted to leverage sort of their heavy hitter in the industry brand. And we asked them if they would feel comfortable identifying some of their specialty trade partners and reaching out to those folks to invite them in, which they did. We had great success with that. We were very intentional about keeping our approach and methodologies very fluid and organic. Again, just really illustrating how employer-led this is, that we are listening to what they're saying. We are crafting the narrative of our solutions-based responses and our approach based on that. And communication is key. We had a lot of sideline conversations in the initial development phases of this, really wanted to create a safe space for everybody to feel like they could come and share things and just be transparent with one another. And as far as the timing of our collaborative launch and kind of where we are in the process, I and another colleague attended the TPM Academy starting in September of 2020 and finished up in late January of started in September 2019, finished up in January 2020, literally right before the onset of COVID. So everything that we have done with this launch has been completely virtual. We began like preliminary investigation work kind of in the late spring to early summer of 2020, just identifying all of the partners that we wanted to work with as co-hosts. So we knew we wanted to reach out to the North Carolina Chamber, the Wilmington Chamber, Cape Fear Collective. We had our first meeting in September of 2020. We established sort of our mission. We started out with about a dozen employer members, mostly general contractors again, manageable numbers because we were really sort of in the embryonic phases of this. I feel like now we've kind of moved on to being infants. We're not really settled on where we're going. We're again letting the employers kind of lead the direction of that. But our numbers are continuing to grow. We're up to about 18 employers now. And we really began trying to identify, and I'm going to wrap up here because I think I'm running long, but we really began to try to identify our first true workforce pain point. And I'll tell you guys, it was initially like herding cats. No disrespect intended, but anywho, I will get into talking more about that because we have already begun to identify the barriers and some potential solutions-based approaches. But I'm going to turn it over to Angela Robbins now, who's with the Construction Career Collaborative in Houston, to let her talk about what they're doing.
Thanks, Tammy. So I'm Angela Robbins Taylor. I'm the Executive Director at Construction Career Collaborative. It's kind of hard to come talk to y'all when you've already heard Carla Thompson talk because we divided lines through upskill between industrial and commercial, and I handle only the commercial space, and we do not play nice with each other. We do not play in the same sandbox, and we do not even believe we have the same job titles. So we have really had to do some work to get everybody on the same page and begin to build vocabulary. We have not had the incredible success that Carla has had. We aspire to be like her. So if you think about, Tammy said they're in the infancy stage or that toddler stage. We might be in kindergarten, but Carla, she's already graduated from high school. So we started our TPM journey a little different. So we were actually born as a nonprofit collaborative in 2009 to address workforce issues. It initially was determined that the reason they pulled all the group of people together before we were birthed was to create an influencing strategy for the internet to attract more people to the workforce. And as they said and talked about how that would work, they went, we can't really attract anybody because we don't have any talent management. They didn't call it talent management. They said we have a lot of broken workforce. I don't even think they called it workforce. I think if I go back and look at the notes, it's all HR. We have no HR practices, right? So they just didn't understand the idea of workforce as an asset, workforce as something that you can manage and that you can actually create the person that you want to hire, that you can work in collaboration with other people to do that, that you could forecast for that. So when I started and we started talking about managing the pipeline, it became abundantly clear that the group of people that I was working with really needed to go further back than that. We had misclassified employees. We had people who were functioning on a 1099 basis who weren't providing, they didn't even own the employees. So they were very not much uninvested in why would I train them? So we've had to take some very strong baby steps, little bitty ones, fall down, skin our knees, get back up. But we are beginning to talk within our industry and grow fairly exponentially around training. So that was what we decided first, was if we could get people to have employees and they would guarantee that they were going to train them once they hired them so that they could continue to grow in a career path, that would be at least a start. And so we have at this point worked with over 170 different companies to verify or build a competency-based career path, which then gives us common vocabulary to go back and begin to look at how do we forecast for that work. We have found that our educational partners have been antsy to get to the table, not because they want to sell us on a specific program, but because they know that their program is not meeting our needs. And so we are also simultaneously trying to work with them to keep them engaged, because we have a very strong CTE program inside the Houston area that is based in architecture and construction, and looking at how we can leverage them to actually do the brand building that we'd like to do so that people want to come play in our space. So that's us. We'll give it to you guys for questions.
Thank you all. We have about 10 minutes for questions.
I think my question, I guess this is really for Angela and Laura, but Laura and I connected. I live about an hour north of Nashville, so we're very close. And I know the rate of construction there is just insane. I mean, it's just blowing up. So how did you, like, you guys were already formed, I guess, maybe before that explosion happened, but how do you keep the members of your collaborative with all the time constraints on their schedules with that? I'm just thinking like it has to be crazy down there to keep them coming to meetings. How do you keep them engaged and like keep up with that?
So I'll take a stab at that, and then I'll let you have a stab, Laura. I will tell you, we didn't prior to COVID because we had kind of some old school mentality, because there's never any good thing that comes out of it. We've always done it that way. But so we had always done it that way, where we went to them and we asked them to be in their office and we met face to face, and we would get guys who were coming in from job sites who would just be so frustrated with us, and they'd be like, really? And then we started using Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and it's been amazing to me how much more engaged they are because they can hit that meeting. It's not uncommon for me. I have one guy who every single time we meet, his phone is on his steering wheel, kind of tilted like this, and then at some point it'll fall and I can see him with his pickup truck, but they are meeting with us, right?
Yeah.
Where prior to that, they never would have had time. So we have leveraged a lot in, especially during COVID, and we will continue to do that. The virtual technology to keep them engaged.
Okay.
I would echo what Angela said. If one good thing came out of this, it was that we normalized a virtual meeting. Because if you've been to Nashville, the traffic to get to the chamber, I mean, it was so difficult to gather people together. So that was definitely a barrier. Having the trust built before was also really helpful to get them around the table, because they knew if we were bringing them, we weren't going to waste their time. But we also really positioned ourselves as helpers in the process. So virtual meetings, helping them with the platform, in some cases doing the platform work for them. But I think it's all about building a muscle. And if you've been through more than one iteration of the system, you know that it gets faster as people are like, oh, I know what this is. I know how to do this. So, I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
I'm working to build a Western Kentucky construction collaborative right now, and I have about 5 prospects that have kind of committed to the process. So Angela, I know your background. We were in the same cohort together. So she's like the construction queen, but I know nothing about construction. So like as a woman in the industry, how do you navigate kind of like being able to talk their language? And, I know we don't have to be the expert about the industry, but just I'm a little intimidated, honestly. Like when I go in to talk to these people, I'm like, I have no idea. So how did you guys, if anybody's got examples of that, how did you overcome that as well?
So I think that one of the things that was very beneficial to me, so I have my board is 25 members, and all but 3 of them, and then myself, are male, almost all of them white male, who've been in the industry for 30 plus years. And I've been in construction for 4. I came in 2017. One thing I learned, I've been a consultant for a long time. One thing I learned is that questions are your friend, and make sure that you really pay attention to the answers, because if you can even semi-intelligently utilize their vocabulary, you build trust very quickly. So learning kind of what's the career path, right? And so, but I leveraged one of my board members, and this would be my recommendation. If you have one who already has a very strong connection to you guys at the chamber, leverage them to ask them, say, look, I want to walk in and be able to speak some of your language.
Right.
Walk me through, what's the construction process? What's that look like? Because we all know, build a house, right? Pour a foundation, put up some walls, put up a roof, And that's pretty typical, but if you're working with industrial or you're working with commercial, there's some more nuance in there. But also ask them, so what would be a typical career path? If I came in completely green to this industry and I'd never done anything skills wise, what would that look like? What would those job titles possibly be? And then always just say, my go-to always is like, I need to learn what you know. And the only way I can learn what you know is if you talk to me. And so give me those questions. And I use very, like when we're talking about competencies, I use very simple words like, tell me what good looks like. If I walked out into your job site, what's a good hand look like? What's a good worker look like? Tell me about, and if you ask people about their jobs, especially people who have been in these industries for 30 and 40 years, they didn't stay because they hate it, stayed because they love it, and they'll tell you everything that you need to know. Take good notes and then read them back, study them, start using them, and never be afraid that you're going to mess up the words or the vocabulary that they've got. They'll help you navigate that piece. But make sure that you let them know that you're the expert in something else that they want.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just leverage what you know, and ask the questions. You know, there is no silly question. I myself, 3 years ago, knew nothing about construction, knew nothing about workforce development. My professional background is deeply, deeply rooted in the nonprofit sector. So I also identified my own personal mentor / champion on our board, a wonderful female who has been in this industry, literally worked her way up from the bottom all the way up to the president of her company. Reached out to her and I said, I cannot even convey how much I respect you and would love to just glean a little bit of information, just whatever nuggets you can share with me. And she really took me under her wing. So if you could find a champion for you like that, just like we're looking for our employer champions to sort of be the driving force behind getting this buy-in to the TPM, that's what I would recommend. And I will also tell you, if you tag me in the chat with your email, I'm going to send you a PowerPoint that AGC of America put together, and it's called Construction 101. And so it's got language and lingo and all kinds of things, but it's really just letting people know, you, like Angela said, you're the expert at this, they're the expert at that, and you're basically, it's a symbiotic relationship, sharing information back and forth.
Gotcha.
And never be afraid to ask the questions.
Oh, I'm not, obviously. Thank you.
We have about 5 minutes left if anyone else has any comments or questions they'd like to share.
I will just add that even though we are a really new collaborative, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but we've had some issues with our employer members having a lot of resistance and pushback to the TPM web tools. They're too busy. They don't have time for surveys. We even offered to have a little 15-minute individual Zoom with them to walk through the registration process for them, do that. As we sent out our first survey regarding projected demand for project superintendents and foremen over an 18-month period, we sent that out to about 36 folks and we got 3 surveys back. Pretty underwhelming. So we realized we needed to step back to the table. Again, it's all about being fluid and just kind of doing the things in response to what your employer group is kind of telling you, and they don't want to do surveys. So what we did was we created a Google survey for our next survey, which kind of, again, was driven by dialogue from the conversation regarding barriers to obtaining OSHA 30 certifications. So we crafted that in Google Docs. We wound up getting about an 85% return rate. So then what we do is, you can create an Excel spreadsheet and then just upload that right into your TPM tools. It has made such a dynamic difference as far as the level of engagement and kind of giving us that quantitative data that we need. But just as I wrap up, I'm just going to say for us, because we're so new and we've done this completely virtually 100%, it was all about getting that buy-in early, creating that safe space, encouraging dialogue, letting them know, listen, you're competitors, but you need to lay your swords down at the door. we're all in it to win it for the same reason at the end of the day. And just kind of listening to them, building that trust, and knowing that, you know, we need to keep it fluid when and where we can, but knowing that the employers are always going to be in the driver's seat, and they are going to lead us in the direction that we need to go. That's what's working for us.
I would echo that. I think that for us, especially with my general contractors, one of the key things was they all said, we don't even have the same job titles. We don't even do the same things. And helping them, I just went, really? Okay, well, let's just sit at the table and everybody I grabbed a whiteboard and I said, everybody give me your job titles. And by the time we were done, they went, oh, wow, we have a lot of the same job titles and do a lot of the same stuff. And so allowing them to be the ones, it's kind of like when you wanted your dad to do something for you or your mom to do something for you, you kind of worked it around till it became their idea. Why don't you get this new car? Why don't you? Like, that never worked with my parents, but that works with the contractors, right? When it becomes their idea, they own it, and then all of a sudden they're committed, and that makes a huge difference.
And I agree with Tammy and Angela. The more employer driven it is, the more success you will have. Because if your employers are coalesced around all of these steps, when you bring education in, and I come from higher ed, but when you bring education in and you say, these are the gaps, these are the points of excellence, all of those conversations are so much more powerful when you've got 6 to 20 employers around the table in agreement. It really allows you to push on that training group and those educators to adjust their curriculum to meet the needs of the workforce today. So.
Carla had a question in the chat. She asked, how do you answer questions when clients ask what is their return on investment?
I'll tell you what we teach in a basic workforce development or talent management course. And what we tell them is it's not about what you invest, it's about what you don't have to reinvest. So every time that you lose an employee and you have to train someone new, you're going to pay at least time and a half of their annual salary to get them back up to production. So if you can get it right the first time, then you're going to not have to do that. And they get that. We talk about it almost like it's warranty work. So this is your insurance against having to do warranty work. You don't have to rehire over and over and over again, because you're hiring the right people with the right skill set at the right time, utilizing this process, and your supply is going to be there when you need it.
Same for us. We really just talk about the cost of turnover versus the cost of planning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you to our panelists and for everyone else who joined. We have one more quick session as a large group, so you guys are welcome to leave the breakout room now. Thanks.
Thank you.